Once upon a time, in a small village called Gakando, nestled in the heart of Africa, lived a couple named Akachi and Zalika. They were known far and wide for their kindness and generosity. The villagers respected them and they lived a happy life. However, Akachi and Zalika had one wish that remained unfulfilled. They longed for a child. After many years of praying to the gods, their wish was granted. Zalika gave birth to a baby boy. But it was not an ordinary boy. His skin was unusually wrinkled. His eyes were large and bright, and his limbs seemed to be too long for his body. The villagers whispered among themselves, calling him strange and ugly. The whispers grew louder and crueler each day. Akachi and Zalika felt the weight of the villagers' judgment and their own fears. They were deeply ashamed and afraid of the villagers' gossip. The village council, unable to understand the boy's appearance, began to murmur about curses and bad omens. The pressure became unbearable for Akachi and Zalika. Akachi and Zalika, overwhelmed by shame and fear, made a heartbreaking decision. They decided to abandon the baby in the forest, hoping that the spirits of the forest would take care of him, or that he would simply disappear, taking their shame with him. On the night they decided to leave the baby, they wrapped him in a blanket and quietly left their home. They walked to the edge of the forest, their hearts heavy with sorrow. When they reached a secluded spot deep in the woods, they placed the baby on the ground. Zalika wept silently, and Akachi's face was edged with pain. They kissed their son goodbye and turned away, leaving him to the mercy of the forest. The villagers, hearing of the abandonment, remained silent. Some felt a pang of guilt, but none spoke up against the decision. They were relieved to be rid of what they believed was a curse. In their ignorance and fear, they allowed the abandonment to happen without protest. In the dense forest, the baby cried and cried, his wails echoing through the trees. His cries were heard by an old woman named Mama Nia, who lived in a small hut deep in the forest. Mama Nia was known as a healer and a woman of great wisdom. She followed the sound of the crying and found the baby lying helplessly on the forest floor. Mama Nia picked up the baby and cradled him in her arms. She looked into his bright eyes and saw not ugliness, but a unique beauty and a great destiny. She decided to raise the boy as her own and named him Jabari, which means brave one. Jabari grew up in the forest under Mama Nia's loving care. Despite his unusual appearance, he was a happy child. Mama Nia taught him everything she knew about the forest, the animals, and the healing herbs. Jabari became strong and wise beyond his years. He learned to live in harmony with nature and developed a deep understanding of the world around him. As Jabari grew older, he became curious about the world beyond the forest. Mama Nia told him stories about the village of Gakando, where he was born. She explained that his parents had abandoned him because they couldn't see past his appearance. Jabari felt a mixture of sadness and anger, but also a strong desire to prove himself. When Jabari was around 10 years old, Mama Nia decided it was time for him to know the full story of his origin. One evening, as the sun set and the forest was bathed in a warm golden light, she called Jabari to sit with her by the fire. The flames danced and crackled, casting shadows on the walls of their hut. "Jabari, my brave one," Mama Nia began, her voice gentle yet firm. "There is something important you need to know about your past." Jabari looked up at her with his large, curious eyes. He had always known that there was something special about him, something that set him apart from others. Mama Nia had always been honest with him, and he trusted her completely. "You were born in the village of Gakondo," she continued. "Your parents, Akachi and Zalika, were good people, but they were weak in their hearts. When you were born, the villagers did not understand your unique appearance. They whispered and gossiped, and your parents became ashamed and afraid." Jabari's heart sank as he listened. He had always wondered why his parents had abandoned him. But hearing the truth was still painful. Mama Nia reached out and took his hand, her touch comforting. "They left you in the forest, hoping the spirits would take care of you," Mama Nia said softly. "But the spirits guided me to you instead. I saw the beauty in you, Jabari, the strength and the potential. I knew that you were destined for greatness." Tears welled up in Jabari's eyes, but he did not let them fall. He squeezed Mama Nia's hand and looked into her eyes. "Why did they abandon me, Mama? Was I not good enough?" "Oh, Jabari," Mama Nia said, her voice filled with love. "It was never about you not being good enough. It was about their own fears and insecurities. They could not see past their own weaknesses to recognize the gift they had been given. But you must not let their actions define you. You are brave, you are strong, and you have a heart full of love." Jabari nodded, feeling a mixture of emotions. He felt sadness for the parents who had left him, but also gratitude for Mama Nia, who had saved him and given him a loving home. Another 10 years passed, and Gakondo faced a terrible crisis. A severe drought hit the village, and the river that provided water to the villagers dried up. The crops withered, and the animals began to die. The villagers were desperate and didn't know what to do. They prayed to the gods, but no help came. During this time, Akachi and Zalika, unable to bear the hardship of the drought, decided to leave Gakondo. They thought they could find a better place where life would be easier. They packed their belongings and set off on a journey, leaving their village and their responsibilities behind. Akachi and Zalika's journey was fraught with difficulties. They encountered dangerous animals, faced severe weather, and struggled to find food and water. Everywhere they went, they found that the drought had affected the land just as severely as it had in Gakondo. They wandered from village to village, but no place was free from the suffering brought by the lack of rain. They faced many challenges along the way. In one village, they were turned away because there wasn't enough food to go around. In another, they barely escaped a band of thieves who roamed the countryside, taking advantage of the desperate times. Akachi and Zalika's spirits were broken. They realized that running away from their problems only led to more hardship. They began to long for the familiarity of Gakondo, even with its struggles. They missed their home and the community they had left behind. One day, as they sat by a dried-up riverbed in a distant village, they heard a group of travelers talking about Gakondo. The travelers spoke of a miracle that had brought water back to the village. The river was flowing again and the crops were flourishing. Akachi and Zalika were astonished and filled with hope. They decided to return to Gakondo and see this miracle for themselves. Meanwhile, in the forest, Mama Nia had a dream. She saw Jabari standing by the dried-up river in Gakondo, and suddenly water began to flow again. She knew that Jabari was the key to saving the village. Mama Nia told Jabari about her dream and encouraged him to go to Gakondo and help the villagers. With a heavy heart and a determined spirit, Jabari set off on his journey to Gakondo. He carried with him a small bag of healing herbs and the knowledge Mama Nia had imparted to him. As he walked, he encountered various animals that he had befriended in the forest. They offered him guidance and protection, ensuring he reached the village safely. When Jabari arrived at the outskirts of Gakondo, he saw the devastation that the drought had caused. The once vibrant village was now dry and lifeless. The villagers were weak and hungry, and there was a sense of hopelessness in the air. Jabari approached the village square, where the villagers had gathered to discuss their dire situation. When they saw him, they gasped in shock. His unusual appearance immediately reminded them of the baby they had abandoned years ago. Whispers spread through the crowd, and some villagers recognized him as Akachi and Zalika's son. The reaction among the villagers were mixed and intense. Some felt a deep sense of guilt for their role in his abandonment. They remembered the whispers and the gossip that had led to his parents' decision to leave him in the forest. Their hearts were heavy with shame, and they avoided looking directly at Jabari, afraid of the judgment in his eyes. Others were still afraid of his strange appearance. The memories of the gossip and fear from 20 years ago had not faded. They were unsettled by the sight of him and instinctively recoiled, unable to hide their discomfort. The fear of the unknown and the unfamiliar still gripped their hearts. A few villagers, particularly those who had never truly understood why Jabari was abandoned, feared that he had returned to seek revenge. They whispered among themselves, speculating about his intentions. They eyed him warily, unsure if they could trust him. The thought that Jabari might hold a grudge for his abandonment made them anxious and defensive. Jabari spoke to the villagers in a calm and soothing voice. He told them that he was there to help and that he had the knowledge that could save the village. Some villagers were skeptical, but the village elder, a wise old man named Kwame, stepped forward and asked Jabari to prove his claims. "Prove to us that you can help, Jabari," Kwame said. "We need to know that your intentions are true and that you have the knowledge to save us." Jabari took a deep breath and began to explain his plan. He detailed how the river had dried up because the balance of nature had been disrupted. He described how, by working together, they could restore the river and bring life back to Gakondo. He suggested that they clear the blocked riverbed, plant trees to restore the ecosystem, and use the healing herbs to strengthen the soil. Kwame and the other elders agreed to give Jabari a chance. The villagers, although hesitant at first, decided to trust him. They had nothing to lose, and Jabari's confidence and kindness began to win them over. Jabari led the villagers to the riverbed. With his guidance, they worked tirelessly to remove the rocks and debris that had blocked the flow of the water. The villagers were amazed at Jabari's strength and knowledge. He showed them which trees to plant and how to use the healing herbs to rejuvenate the land. However, not everyone was convinced of Jabari's intentions. Some villagers, still skeptical and fearful of his strange appearance, whispered among themselves. A few of them suggested that they seek help from another source, a man named Amadi, who was known for his cunning, but had also the reputation for getting things done quickly. Amadi arrived in the village with grand promises, offering quick solutions to their problems. He spoke with a silver tongue, convincing some of the villagers that his methods would be faster and easier than Jabari's plan. Desperate and confused, a group of villagers decided to follow Amadi's lead despite Kwame's warnings. Jabari, sensing that something was wrong, confronted Amadi. He could see through Amadi's facade and knew that his intentions were not genuine. But Amadi was persuasive, and some villagers were still swayed by his promises. The villagers were torn. They had seen the progress made under Jabari's guidance, but the lure of a quicker solution was tempting. The older villagers, who remembered the decision to abandon Jabari as a baby, felt a deep sense of shame. They were conflicted between their guilt and the desire for a swift end to their suffering. Ayo, one of the villagers who had been particularly vocal in his disdain all those years ago, struggled with his emotions. He remembered mocking Akachi and Zalika and felt a heavy burden of guilt. Seeing Jabari now offering his help despite everything made Ayo question his own actions and beliefs. Zuri, who had always been kind-hearted but too afraid to speak out against the majority, felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had often thought about the abandoned baby and wondered what had become of him. Now, seeing Jabari, she felt both relief and sorrow. Relief that he had survived and thrived, and sorrow for the role she had played in his abandonment. As the villagers still wrestled with their emotions and the decision between Jabari and Amadi, something miraculous happened. Jabari's unusual wrinkled skin began to heal. The deep wrinkles softened and his skin took on the healthy appearance of a young African man in his early 20s. His bright blue eyes remained, but his face now radiated strength and resilience. Akachi and Zalika returned to Gakondo. They were astonished by the transformation of the village. The once dry and desolate place was now vibrant with life. At the village square, they saw the villagers gathered and heard murmurs about the savior who had brought water back to Gakondo. Curious, they pushed through the crowd and saw Jabari standing at the center, engaged in a heated discussion with Amadi. Akachi and Zalika's heart pounded as they recognized their son, the child they had abandoned. As Jabari turned, he saw his parents in the crowd. He felt a wave of emotions wash over him: anger, sadness, and a glimmer of hope. He had always wondered about them and why they had abandoned him. Now, seeing them, he felt both a desire for reconciliation and the pain of their rejection. Akachi and Zalika, too, were overwhelmed with emotions. They recognized Jabari immediately, despite the many years they had passed. The reason was simple. Despite the years, Jabari had the same bright blue eyes they had looked into 20 years ago. These eyes, though matured and filled with wisdom, were unmistakable. They were filled with guilt and shame, realizing that their son had grown into the savior of their village. Elder Kwame stepped forward and addressed the crowd. "This young man, who you abandoned and mocked, has come back to save us all. We must choose wisely whom to follow: Jabari, who has shown us the path to restoration, or Amadi, who offers quick fixes with no guarantees." The villagers looked at Jabari and then at Amadi. Amadi's promises now seemed hollow in comparison to the tangible results Jabari had achieved. The inner conflict in their hearts began to resolve as they recognized the true hero among them. Jabari took a deep breath and addressed the villagers. "I have come to help you, not to seek revenge. We must work together to restore balance to our land. Quick fixes will not bring lasting change. We need to be patient and work with nature." The villagers, moved by Jabari's sincerity and wisdom, began to turn away from Amadi. Even those who had initially supported Amadi now saw the truth. They realized that Jabari's plan, though requiring more effort, was the only real solution. Amadi, seeing his influence wane, tried one last time to sway the villagers, but his words fell on deaf ears. The villagers had made their choice. With the villagers united behind Jabari, they continued their work on restoring the river and the land. Day by day, the river began to flow more strongly. The crops began to grow, and the animals returned. Gakondo flourished once again. Akachi and Zalika approached Jabari with tear-filled eyes. They fell to their knees and begged for his forgiveness. "Jabari, we are so sorry for abandoning you. We were weak and foolish. Can you ever forgive us?" Jabari looked at his parents, his heart heavy with emotions. He remembered Mama Nia's teaching about forgiveness and compassion. "I forgive you," he said softly, "but forgiveness alone is not enough. We must learn from our mistakes and work together to build a better future." Akachi and Zalika nodded, their hearts filled with gratitude and relief. They vowed to make amends by working tirelessly alongside Jabari and the villagers. Under Jabari's leadership, Gakondo became a symbol of resilience and unity. The villagers learned the importance of acceptance, compassion, and hard work. They realized that true strength comes from working together and embracing each other's differences. The story of Jabari taught them that appearances can be deceiving and that everyone has the potential for greatness, regardless of how they look. It also showed them the power of forgiveness and the importance of facing challenges head-on rather than running away. The villagers of Gakondo, grateful for Jabari's efforts, approached him with a request. "Jabari, we would be honored if you would stay with us and be part of our community." Jabari smiled warmly, but shook his head. "I belong to the forest and to Mama Nia, who I need to take care of. The forest is my home, and Mama Nia is my family." The villagers understood and respected his decision. They thanked him profusely, knowing that they owed their renewed village to his wisdom and kindness. And so Jabari returned to the forest, where he continued to live in harmony with nature and care for Mama Nia. The village of Gakondo flourished, carrying the lessons they had learned from Jabari in their hearts. And thus, the tale of Jabari, the brave one, became a legend, reminding all who heard it of the power of love, forgiveness, and unity. Did you enjoy this tale? If yes, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you won't miss any of the upcoming stories. And let me know in the comments what you liked most about the story. I will be happy to hear from you and answer to your comments. See you in the next story. Bye bye.